in relation somewhat to my conversation, tariffs are the news, and we think, it's not really affecting us in senior living. I was just talking to a move-in coordinator who had a potential resident who was qualified 2 weeks ago, who is no longer qualified today, right? So even these things that don't necessarily affect the building side of the world, the marketing side of the world, if the residents don't have the funds to move in, that presents a whole different challenge for us. So I appreciate the intel today. It's nice to have those stories to tie together. So as I said, I'm Seth Anthony from LeadingAge, Pennsylvania, Vice President, Member Excellence. I got my start with Masonic Village here in Lancaster County. We were just this morning at the Lancaster Area Senior Services Breakfast. Fun fact, in Lancaster County, about 6% of the population of the entire county either works at a senior living community or is employed by a senior living community. So 6% of the entire county, and other folks I was talking to this morning said every generation of their family has worked at a senior living community in Lancaster County. So the impact of what we do in senior living, not just in this county, but across the Commonwealth, is huge. And it's, as it relates to workforce and employment and those things, without our industry and the support industries around it, it's a major impact to our economy here in the state. So for those who aren't familiar, LeadingAge PA, mission, vision, values, all that stuff that we normally do to evolve the continuum of aging services in Pennsylvania and really act as advocates for our members. We'll talk a little bit later about our current advocacy as it relates to budget and staffing and all of those things that apply. But we're here to represent the provider members across the state. We like to think about aging services as a continuum of care, recognizing that it's not just senior living providers, it's the home care providers, the hospice providers, the acute care hospitals. We're all competing for the same staff and the same talent. And quite frankly, a lot of you are building and constructing things for all of these parts of the healthcare continuum, right? So we have to work together to make this work. Right now, we have 416 provider members with LeadingAge Pennsylvania across multiple lines of service. That includes 180 assisted living personal care, I know they're different, but for the purpose of this, 175 skilled nursing providers, 163 independent living campuses, 132 CCRCs, 127 on the affordable housing providers, 33 life programs, and 29 home and community-based services providers. So really, we are working across that entire spectrum of care. So who knows what this location is? And I grew up in Erie. It's not Erie County. Good try, though. So anybody recognize this from fiction or literature? You can shout it out. Game of Thrones. It's the Wall, right? It is that cold. My folks did have snow in Erie 2 days ago. It was only 2 inches. That's why I live in this part of Pennsylvania, not Erie anymore. When we look at a map of Pennsylvania, this 2022 map from the Wolf administration, what do we see? Obviously, the state's broken down into 6 areas. But any thoughts when you look at a map of PA, what you think about the different regions? Nothing specific here, just thoughts. So certainly the southeast and south central Pennsylvania is where we see most of the aging services and senior living. The western part of the state and the northern parts of the state we see less. But really, there's one feature of this map that makes the most sense. And let me introduce you to the wall. It's I-80. I-80 is the wall in Pennsylvania. You get north of the wall, 1, it snows a lot. and 2, we start to see major challenges in aging services as it relates to access of care, funds, and other things. We often talk in Pennsylvania about east-west, right? It's Pittsburgh, Philly, That's sports-driven, I think, a lot. But we don't talk about and think about the state in a north-south way. And really, economically, above I-80 is very different than what we see below I-80. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as it relates to aging services and why it matters to us in Lancaster County and this area and then more broadly across the state. This map is from the Hospital Association of Pennsylvania. It maps out where all the hospitals are. I think it's pretty evident that the access to care in northern and rural Pennsylvania is pretty different than what we see in the more populated areas, especially up in Bradford County, Tioga, Potter, where you have one hospital serving an entire county. And even some counties that have no hospital systems at all functional. So that's Elk County, where there's nothing there in the western part of the state. So the red line in all of these maps will represent roughly where I-80 sits. to give you a point of reference. This is a map of LeadingAge Pennsylvania providers. Again, red line is I-80. Above that, you can see that the cluster really starts to thin out, and the options for aging services in the northern part of the state are challenging, especially when you move away from some of the more populated areas. This is a population density map, just to drive the point home a little bit more. Again, you can see where the population centers are. The tall red spike on the red line, State College, roughly. So that's really outside of the Erie area, a little bit of Scranton, a little bit of the Lehigh Valley. That's kind of the last bastion of major population centers. So it's the same state with different challenges. It's all about the tax base. That's a major challenge for us as we start thinking about where the tax is coming from to operate the municipalities in these areas. Thankfully, many of our members have pilot agreements or otherwise have managed their taxes, but the tax base becomes an issue. Access to care and care alternatives in those northern and rural counties and what impact that has across the state. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about competition for workforce, because that's going to be a direct impact as well. So it's not all bad news, though. The marketing people in the room will really appreciate this. This is a map by, I believe it's zip code, that shows the increase in property values. The darker the green, the more the property values have gone up. I believe this is from 2019 forward. So I find this map fascinating because where do we see the property values spiking? Lehigh Valley, northeastern Pennsylvania, right? From a construction, building, move-in standpoint, rising property values are good. That means they can afford your communities and look to move in there. But then we also see some other interesting things like the Pittsburgh area, not experiencing that same rise in property values that we're seeing in south central Pennsylvania and northeastern Pennsylvania. Again, making where are we going to build, how are we going to build, this is an important factor. If property values are steady or declining, they're not really declining in any specific area, but just holding steady versus those areas where there's opportunity. This is a projected statewide population change. Again, talking about the demographics here, 2020 to 2050. So we're at 2025. This map's got another 20 years on it. If you look where the population is projected to increase, the highest county at 15% is Juniata County, which I find interesting. I don't know a good reason why they're the highest. But then you start looking at some of these other counties. Warren County down 11%. The highest of those is Pike County at 24% decrease in population. So as we start thinking about what does this mean for access to care, access for senior services, if there's no population there to serve and no tax base, what happens? Meanwhile, we've got the southeastern part of the state and Center County certainly doing well. Erie County really wants to be in the positive. It's 0.3%. We'll take it. Projected population, rural youth versus the senior population. So the dark yellow line is seniors. The lighter blue line is your rural population. This is 1990 to 2050. So this begs the question, who's going to take care of the people in those rural counties? So we have a senior population that continues to increase and a youthful population that continues to leave those counties. It's not just a matter of competition for workforce. There's no workforce. And that's not just in our space, that's construction trades, allied trades, the Amazon warehouse down the street. If there's nobody there to employ, it makes our business very difficult. So this is a map of most common age by Pennsylvania. So this is a median age, it's a modal age. The most common age by Pennsylvania County in 2023. So you look at that and see 21, there's some spaces. Well, this map directly correlates to what? It's where all the schools are, right? So those modal ages are really being brought down by the schools that are in those counties. So it's a little bit of a fake out. But when you look back, look at the ages in those rural northern counties. The most common age is 65 years old. And those folks just entering into our continuum of care, and even along the southern border there, we see 65, 64. So really, if there's not a college or a university in that area, your average age is in that 60 to 69 zone. And those are the people we're working to serve and are looking for access to care. So you're saying, okay, Seth, we get it. Rural population, not a lot of options. What does this matter and how does it impact AEC? I had a brief and a hot minute of working in AAC, so I can speak enough language to say AAC and feel like I am in the crowd and do my best for you. But it really does impact not just the aging services space, but also the construction side of the business. This is nursing home bed closures from 2014 to 2024 from the association. All of this to say that since February of 2014, we've taken offline about 5,000 nursing beds in Pennsylvania. So again, when we talk access to care, what does that mean? This isn't just, hey, we're closing. This is beds that are still sitting in communities that could be used, that we just can't staff right now. We don't have the opportunity to staff them. So if we can't staff what we have, are we going to go build more? Probably not. We're going to try to remodel what we have. But yet, we have the silver tsunami that everybody's heard about of boomers and increased demand and capacity while we continue to shrink actual access to care. That's going to prove to be a challenge for us in years coming. So a lot of this has to do with workforce. If you haven't seen our new workforce survey, this just came out last week that we did in conjunction with the Hospital Association of Pennsylvania and PHTA. So we're going to give you some real hard statistics out of this about what workforce looks like. If you thought this was going to be the really exciting, invigorating presentation, I regret to inform you that this is going to be a Debbie Downer a little bit, but it's important stuff for us to understand. So the effects of the shift, simply put, there's more older Pennsylvanians to take care of. We know that. There's a smaller available workforce in those rural areas in competition, and lower tax base for municipalities. Because as businesses leave, so the tax base goes down, and as those businesses leave, so leaves the residents who are supporting those businesses, again, continuing to impact the tax base. Barriers faced in recruiting and retention for nursing homes. The number one thing that was brought up was just lack of qualified individuals. 77% of those responding to our survey just had, there's nobody qualified for us to even hire. 62% inability to offer competitive wages benefits due to financial constraints. We heard at LeadingAge National this week a long discussion about labor and skilled labor and the opportunities that are there, and how young men in their prime in that 20 to 30 are just opting out of the workforce and proving to be a challenge to recruit into some of those frontline labor positions in a variety of sectors. And last, geographical location. So some of our rural providers, I think of the Bradford Ecumenical Home up in Bradford, PA, they're really one of the only providers in that area. And we talk about the skilled labor that they need. If you're in Warren County, Bradford County, you probably only have, quite honestly, 3 nursing home administrators in the whole county. If one leaves, what are you going to do? You have to go to your competition down the street and try to recruit their administrator away, or pay a lot of money to try to relocate somebody to be the administrator for your community, right? So that proves to be a whole separate challenge, and not just the frontline care, but the skills that are required to actually operate a community and provider may just not exist in that rural area, and how do you find them? We're spoiled here in the southeastern part of the state. I visited a member last week in outside of Philadelphia who has 4 nursing home administrators on staff. 4. We've got communities that can barely keep 1 because of the competition that's out there and trying to recruit them. More than half of nursing homes in Pennsylvania have 10 open positions. So huge deficits in what's available out there. And while providers are competing for caregivers, they're also competing for that other frontline talent and experienced leaders, as I mentioned. We all know and have heard the stories about competing for the folks who can go work at the Amazon warehouse. But even in the AC and allied trades space, we're competing for the same HVAC guys. We're either full-time at a community or out doing installation and construction. There's so much of that out there in hot competition in the labor market that's proving very challenging. Again, how many experienced directors of nursing are out there that we can pull into some of these rural parts of the state, and what happens whenever we have vacancies? It's not necessarily an easy skill set to find. I know this is small, but I'll run across the numbers on the top. Workforce shortages straining the hospital side. So talk about the hospital side here and as it plays back, and why it should matter to you as an individual living in the Commonwealth. 70% of emergency departments in the state have reported increased wait time. So that's not just a senior living problem, that's you get hurt and go to the hospital, your wait time is longer. We know that because of the workforce challenges we have. Reported increase in wait times for scheduled appointments and procedures. who's tried to make a specialist appointment through a hospital system recently, you know that it's going to be a bit of a wait. Eliminated or scaled back a service line, 28%, and had to reduce available beds on a regular basis, 20%. Listening to some podcasts and things related in the last couple of weeks, often the first service to be scaled back when a hospital is in trouble is obstetrics. It's an expensive service line that doesn't necessarily bring in a lot of money, but if you're in rural Pennsylvania and you don't have access to obstetric care, what's driving young people to go to that part of the state and have kids? It's all this compounding factor, right? What happens in those rural parts of the state? From a nursing home standpoint, 53% reported limiting admissions or capping their census in a nursing home because they just don't have the workforce to be able to handle it. 38% are deferring facility improvements. That's where you come in. So opportunities to build and expand facilities. 38% of providers saying we're not doing that because we've got other challenges that we have to face right now. 24% are putting admission referrals on wait lists. Wait lists are a thing. I talked to a provider here in central Pennsylvania not too long ago that said they now have a 7-year wait list. And they're not looking to build because they look at the market and what's going on out there and say, I don't know if I want to take on that debt. Is it the time to build? You know, I've got 7 years of pretty solid growth here. Why mess with the debt and see what happens? Not to go on too far of a tangent, but we're all very much enjoying and riding this boomer silver tsunami that we're facing right now, right? Where's my Gen Xers in the room? Gen X? There's many of you, right? There are physically less of you than there are boomers. So 20 years from now, when all of the boomers have phased out of senior living and Gen X is phasing in, there's going to be more inventory than what Gen X can really take. And then we've got to figure out what does the model look like for the Gen X group that quite frankly has had a terrible time in the market, that has not had the job opportunities, the financial opportunities, or the real estate wealth to then move into a community, sell their home, and what does that market look like 20, 25 years from now? So enjoy the ride, build while you can, because Gen X and us millennials are going to screw it up for you 25 years from now. It's just a matter of time. As a leading edge millennial, I appreciate that. We'll let Gen X figure out the problem, and then by the time I move in, it'll all be sorted out. That's how I'm looking at this. 20% have closed full wings or units, and 20% are eliminating or scaling back non-clinical services or programming. So again, the way the hospitals interact with us, we've all heard about hospitals just not even having places to discharge folks to in the long-term care space. So according to the Pennsylvania Health Access Network, 33 hospital closures in Pennsylvania during the past 20 years, 15 of those in the past 5. Hospitals are either they're affiliating and becoming part of the big networks, Geisinger, Penn State, those, or they're just closing, and that's really a critical access to care issue. We also know that older adults prefer to age in place. So when they don't have somewhere to go in their local community or even in their county, move-in coordinators and market people, how hard is it to dislodge somebody from the county they live in to say, oh, you've always lived in northeastern Pennsylvania and Pike County, come to Philadelphia, right? That's not an easy or move for them to talk about or think about. It's not where their friends are, it's not where their family is, it's not where they've had roots in life. So we can continue to build where it makes sense for us, but there's always going to be a population that we can't serve because they're not interested in going a long distance for a move. And then the closure of those healthcare facilities directly impacts long-term care providers to offer services. So if there's no hospital in an area to discharge people to the long-term care provider, again, another challenge for us to face. We've talked about decreasing in the north, we're increasing in the south. Those areas of increase also tend to trend younger, that's positive. Increased competition for staff across the entire ecosystem, which we have touched on. Demand remains really strong here in the southeastern part of the state, but the ability to staff at various levels of care impacts those development opportunities. And again, if we can't staff what we're building, there's not much we can do. 25% of nursing home providers reported that they are unable to use 10% of their licensed bed due to lack of staff. So if you've got a community with 300 beds and you say, I can't fill 30 of them, not only what does that do to your ability to look forward and build, but what's that doing to your bottom line today? It's really impacting them financially. And having been with some folks who are on foundations and development boards, that rely heavily on their charitable giving and their charitable foundations to backfill. If that charitable foundation just lost 15% of its value in the last week and a half, what happens? It's all a confounding influence. 2,443 referrals from hospitals declined in the last 90 days as reported by nursing home providers. So this is folks saying, we want to discharge people to your facility. 2,500 people were told, no, we can't staff it. Can't do it. So what are we doing as LeadingAge to help providers, and what can you do in your space and working as allied services to help? There's a thing called the base adjustment factor. It's for those who are at the Lancaster Senior Services group this morning, you can probably explain this better than anybody. Our GA team is very good at this. But basically it's saying that it's a way for the government to cap and say, you're only going to get so much on every dollar. We're going to allocate you X number of dollars, and if you go over that, we're sorry. We're just going to back down those numbers. We're not adding more dollars if you go over. You're only going to get what you get. Sometimes that might be 84%, sometimes it might be 68%. So it's a moving target. What we've are asked this year from a government affairs standpoint is to set the base adjustment factor at 90%. That if you're going to tell us that we're getting this, we expect that we will get at least 90% of that dollar that you've promised us. One of the best ways for allied groups and folks who support senior living here's your tip as somebody who was on the business provider side, for the business providers in the room. One of the best ways to get time to talk to our providers is to come out and advocate with them. Yesterday when we were up on the Hill, we had advocates from the bankers, we had advocates from therapy and those allied systems that can talk to those challenges and say to a legislator, it's not just the nursing home that you're impacting if they can't build. It's my team of skilled tradesmen that don't have a job because I don't have a nursing home to expand and build. That's the kind of thing that you can do as an advocate alongside our providers that's really helpful to us. The workforce development and career opportunity side, especially those beyond direct care roles, this is where my team works very hard to talk to young people and say, it's not just about being a CNA. There's opportunities in skilled trades, there's opportunities in IT and accounting and HR and all those things that go into operating a community. Yes, we have to have those frontline workers, but there's other opportunities out there for you to be involved in our space and make it a space of choice. I'm willing to bet if I went around this room and said, who went to college to be in senior living? It's gonna be a pretty small number. I think we all sort of just fell into this as a career that we've come to grow and enjoy. And that's where our Careers for Love campaign comes in, to have those conversations with young people and say, this isn't a career where you just fall into it. This can be a career of choice. But if we don't have a provider and we don't have a hospital and we don't have that, there's no career for them to choose into and opt into. So a couple of save the dates for you. Art Lobby Day, we just mentioned this, June 10th in Harrisburg. It's the day before our annual conference. We love and encourage business partners to come out and join us for Lobby Day. Have those conversations with your reps and senators and help them understand that 6% of the county here in Lancaster County is employed or lives at a retirement community. And when you start making decisions that impact those residents and those people who work there, it directly impacts you and your business and the folks that work alongside you. Our annual conference, June 11 to 13. Hopefully we see you there. If you're interested in exhibiting or looking for ways to sponsor, Natalie is here and can happy to talk to you about that. That's her world. And then our Fall Finance Conference in October, when I'm sure that there will be a lot of talk of tariffs and other things. We'll have that all figured out by October. No problem. That'll be fine. So we invite you to join us for all of those. With that, I'll stop and take any questions that you may have from us or from LeadingAge. Anything I can answer for you? I know I've made everybody very depressed. Womp womp. Labor's not fun. But it's the challenge we're facing here in the Commonwealth, and hopefully we can find some ways to build and grow that labor pool.
Yes. Do you have an example of any system or provider that has done something creative that has impressed you with attracting the right labor or filling that gap?
Great question. So it was asking if there's a provider or system that has done something new or innovative. And if anybody had a magic bullet, I think they would have manufactured and sold that out for sure and found a way to do it. What we're seeing a lot of is, especially on the frontline care provider side, is new and innovative ways to quickly and efficiently train up CNAs. The problem right now and the backlog in that is actually not training, it's the state and testing. the state has been very slow to manage the testing process for that. We are working with a new group called Nightingale, that is an educator that works specifically with CNAs that are looking for new locations across the Commonwealth. Traditionally, they've worked with hospitals to do clinicals, especially for CNAs, and they've come to us and said, we want to expose our potential CNAs to something other than hospital systems. Can we get some clinical sites to go out and find senior living communities? And they came to us and said, we would like to do this in Clarion County. Clarion County does not get a lot of attention, as you might imagine. So these are the kind of providers we're looking for to say, how can we support and improve that access to the education that these folks need as we grow? So we're continuing to look for that, but Nightingale is a great example of something that's unique of not even a senior living provider, but an educator trying to find ways to influence this space. Anybody else? Very good. Well, I hope you enjoyed your salad, and my speech was ancillary to that. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you.